Hello, welcome to Hitchhiking Stars. I am Fernanda Paiva, and this video will be where is Venus retrograding based on your ascendant. So which house, what areas, how can you put a little bit more specificity into these transit that's happening to all of us. So Venus is going retrograde on the 23rd of July, and it'll be retrograded until the 3rd of September when it stations, and it's still going to be moving slow, so those questions still be relevant for a little while. But that's the period that Venus will be going backwards. So I already did a video, part 1, where I'm talking everything Venus related, as usual with my other videos, if you already know. If you don't know, welcome. I'm very happy you found me somehow. And so part 1 is already there. If you want to get deeper into what Venus talks about, what are the possible themes and colors and motivations behind Venus, behind astrological Venus, that's all in that video. It's full of information and it's full of timestamps as well, if you want to just click on the things that you feel is relevant and important to you, right? So without any delays, let's move on. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you only Venus, as I've been doing with other videos as well, so you can see clearly where Venus is in a house. And also, just before I do that, just to again, I am using equal house system for all of these videos because it's easier, it's a bit more neat, and it's just simpler to look at, and it's simpler to look at in my humble opinion. And it also considers the degrees of the ascendant, which is very important to me, and that's the reason why I don't use whole house system. So as usual as well, you're going to see that I am very, very much considering the degrees, and I have come up with a way of doing early degrees, mid degrees, and late degrees again, and every video is unique. So read the description for you to find out more details if you want, because there'll be plenty. As a Virgo, there'll be plenty of details. Anyhow, let's move on to sharing the screen and having a look at Venus in the houses. Cool. So here we have Venus at 28 degrees. That's when Venus will be stationing to go retrograde. And I usually start as per with the Aries rising. So for you that has Aries rising, so that's early degrees, so from 0 to 12 degrees, yeah. And also the late degrees of Pisces, which I'll talk about towards the end of the video when there is Pisces, but it works for the late degrees of Pisces as well. Venus will be retrograde in the 5th house. All right, now why did I get the mid degrees as well? Just a little quick explanation is because for the mid degrees, Venus will be in one house and retrograde back to another house. So I think that's relevant in itself. And we will talk about the mid degrees of Aries here, and I'll explain it for you. But for the early degrees, 0 to 12, Venus is in the 5th house. So if I keep moving here, you see 12 degrees, Aries rising here, Venus has just moved in the 5th house, as you can see, just going backwards a little bit. Is red is because it's already retrograde on my software. So Venus will be in the 5th. Now, the 5th house is a kind of a house that we can see Venusian themes already connected. Even though it's a natural house of Leo, the 5th house has a connection with love affairs as well, which is one of the things that Venus sort of naturally rules. So anything for you, and it also, Venus rules your 7th house, Aries rising. So there's definitely going to be relationships kind of connected with this retrogradation for you. How much fun do you have in your relationships? Perhaps those are some of the questions here. How much fun do you have? How much are you actually sharing your values there in your partnerships and your needs for novelty? I think novelty is the word for the 5th house as well, but also time to have fun in general. Venus in Leo talks about fun, and the 5th house is the natural house of Leo, so there is the sense of fun. And how much fun have you been having? Are you just too busy doing things and trying to get things done and putting a lot of your energy into projects and not really looking into the other side of life, well, this Venus will be an invitation for you to have a look at that, to think about what are your values when it comes to hobbies, to something that's a little bit more lighthearted in your life. It could also be your relationship to children, your relationship to your partner and children as well, and how this is affecting or not. You know, usually remember that usually a retrograde planet is inviting you to rethink, to redo, to re-see, to rearrange something in that area. So it's not necessarily about already taking action on that, and I know that's challenge here with an Aries rising, but it is about reassessing what is the state of your relationships, what is the state of your hobbies, of your fun, of your relationship to the inner child as well, and to actual children if you already have children. How is that relationship going? Do you have enough time to, you know, quality time with your children? That's Venus in Leo there in the 5th house as well. So all of those kind of will be there in the spotlight for you. And it's really important to think about the house in your chart that's ruled by Venus, because those houses will be involved in a picture. And that's the 7th, like I mentioned, so relationships, but also the 2nd house, so money and values will also be involved in everything 5th house connected. All right. So this is for you, early degrees of Aries. Now, for the mid degrees, which I consider 13 to 27, this Venus will be in the 5th, moving on to the 4th house. So, you know, between the 5th and the 4th. And what I find interesting of, you know, what I find compelling about these mid degrees and why I had to separate them in this way and consider it is because you're doing somehow kind of a 2-house exploration here, because if it's going from one to the other, they're somehow interconnected. So you're somehow, you know, it's a threshold here that you're sort of exploring both ways. You know, it's like it is the 5th house and what we just talked about in relation to children and fun and etc. But you're gonna see that these flavor will also bleed into the 4th house. So it might start with elements of the 5th house, but by the point that Venus moves back to your 4th house, because that's inevitably going to happen, and it will happen at different times to, you know, to the different degrees that you have, and this is a little bit more specific, so I really recommend that you look into the degrees of your house and you find out how to look into the ephemeris if you can, and then you can find out when that Venus is moving to the 4th house, because it will. And for the late degrees, it will be a 4th house retrogradation. So between 28 and 29 degrees, Aries rising, it will be a 4th house retrogradation here. It will be between the 5th and the 4th for you mid degrees, but the 4th house will be talking about everything home related, right? Family situations, fun in the family, beautifying the house, how, you know, happy are you with your house, and the house as it is, you know, can you make anything better there? Can you beautify that a little bit more? Can you spend more fun time at home as well? You know, that's all like 4th house related. Can you go back into some situation, family, and make, you know, peacemaking is another function of Venus, really. So regathering the peace in the family home, in the family situation, that's a 4th house flavor here for you with the Venus, you know, transiting in your 4th. And the Venus will be in the 4th for the late degrees of Aries, but also all the early degrees of Taurus. Look, and keep an eye on this as I'm talking, okay? Because that's Venus, and those are the degrees of the Ascendant. Look, 6 degrees Taurus, 7 degrees Taurus, and all has that Venus in the 4th house. So the Venus will be there, and again, that's the feeling of who am I when I'm at home? Because with the Taurus rising, Venus is your chart ruler. So it has something quite powerful to say on how you come out into the world, how you show yourself in life, how you introduce yourself to the world, right? How you meet the world. And so transiting in your fourth and retrograding in your fourth will be those questions about your sense of identity. But can you see your identity reflected in your home situation as well, in your house, in your surroundings? Is there anything that you can do to beautify your surroundings as well? You know, anything like that will be an opportunity, will be an invitation here for you, early Taurus rising as well. Now for the mid Taurus, we'll have Venus, and again mid 13 to 27, we're gonna have Venus going from the fourth to the third. So again, this is a threshold transit. We're gonna be with these degrees on the Taurus rising, we're gonna be exploring two different houses, two different areas of our lives. One area will somehow bleed into the other. It's like whatever it is in the fourth house, in the family, in the home situation, will have something to do with a new learning, or with a new way to communicate, or communicating your values, you know, something that will be important, that will be part of that situation in the fourth house as well. But the invitation is for these two houses there to be somehow connected one another, you know, connected amongst each other, the fourth and the third there for you. And also remembering that at some point Venus will cross the IC. So depending on what degree you have on the ascendant and the moment that Venus will retrograde over that IC, then again, that's going to be a very sensitive point that Venus will be crossing over. And any questions, any issues that you might have on the Venusian arena will be very under the spotlight there in your inner life. You know, I feel that the IC talks so much about our inner life, about our most private point, our private self as well. So that Venus on the IC will be bringing that question even more strongly to you. How authentic are you being there? You know, Venus in Leo. So the Leo will be asking the authenticity questions for all the signs, all the ascendants, but the houses will be showing us where. And so in the innermost self, in the IC, in the, you know, and how you're expressing verbally as well yourself, because that's when Venus moves to the third house. Now for the late degrees of Taurus, which will be 28, 29, you're going to have Venus retrograde in the third house already. So it will be the whole time, most of the time will be in the third house. So that's for the late Taurus, but also for the early Gemini. So 0 until 12, Venus will be transitioning your third house. It will be about your values in communication, in ideas, asking questions. How do you express yourself? How do you show yourself? You know, I think self-expression is a very important one here for you, with the Venus in the third house. And, you know, anything unconscious with Taurus in the 12 for the early Gemini risings. And the fifth house as well, you know, the hobbies, the fun, children, etc., all of that, or even like creativity as well. How much are you being able to express yourself creatively with your words? Are you learning something new? Are you going to be reviewing what you're learning? Remembering that Venus is in Leo for all of us, although it's in the third house for you, is in Leo for all of us. So it will be talking about self-worth, self-appreciation, taking the limelight, you know, somehow doing something for fun, doing something because it pleases you. You know, those are the things connected with Venus in Leo in general. You know, are you having fun with what you're doing? What's going on there? You know, that Venus in the third house will be talking about that. Maybe sorting out conflict with a sibling. Venus retrograde in the third house, a sibling comes back, you know, and you're able to solve a situation there as well that's being somehow, you know, in the forefront, and you haven't been able, because Venus is also about peacemaking, you know, making peace, coming back together, compromising somehow, you know. It could be writing a letter to a love affair, fifth house, third house related, you know. There's something about expressing yourself and learning something new that this Venus retrograde will kind of shine the light there for you to, you know, and invite you to rethink, to reassess as well. You know, are you being expressive enough? Are there any unconscious connections with Venus? Is there any difficulty in expressing Venus in your life? You know, this is another point that's very important to every rising, every sign, is to know what is the situation of your Venus in your chart. And I'm going to talk about that again at the end of the video, because I want every rising to see that. So it will be third house related. Now for the mid Gemini, we're gonna have the in-between houses again. We're gonna have third house moving on to the second house. So it will start with questions about communication, self-expression, expressing yourself verbally, asking questions, learning something, you know, learning something new, and etc., etc. So we'll start with that. All the you know, all the third house related subjects, but it will bleed into the second house. So it will move on into your second house at some point, which will be about money. So we'll start with something that you're learning, something that you're communicating, that you're thinking about, that you're writing about, etc. And you will go back into the second house. So it will be into your house of values, of money, of resources as well. And so the question will move from, you know, siblings, or it could be a financial situation with a sibling. It could be finances related to something new that you're learning, or, you know, paying for a course. Is that something that you really have the resources for? Are you doing, you know, are you investing in your well-being as well, in your self-worth there with that Venus in Leo, right? It's about being a queen somehow, or a king. Excuse me. So it will unite these two houses. Whereas for the late Gemini, so the 28, 29, as well as the early Cancer, we're gonna have Venus retrograde in the second house mainly. So it will be moving backwards in the second house. So it will be all about the second house. You know, what are your values? How much money you're making? Are you making enough money? Are you spending too much money? You know, are you investing enough money in yourself? Perhaps, you know, with the Venus in Leo there might be questions around that, if you're investing money in yourself. And with the Cancer rising, the early Cancer rising, the same. But it might be because then the house cusps shift, and we're going to have Taurus in the 11th and Libra in the 4th. It might be finances, money, and values, but also that involves the home situation, the ruler of the IC. You know, is it what's going on in the house will have an impact in that second house, in the finances. You know, they're sort of interconnected somehow, because this is what you have natally. This is what rules natally. You know, this is where Venus is connected natally for you. So it'll be all about values, finances, like I said, paying, not paying, paying too much, you know, lending money to friends. Are they paying you back? You're going to be reviewing all of that. Your friends, you know, valuing you enough. With the, you know, 11th to the 2nd. Are you investing money in charitable causes? You know, Taurus in the 11th house, like how is that going on for you? But he's definitely this more practical area of life that this is going to be under the spotlight for you with the early Cancer rising. Now for the mid Cancer rising, and I'm going to accelerate here to get to the mid Cancer rising, and there we have, for the mid Cancer rising, we're going to have second house moving back to the first house. So we will start with these questions about money and resources, and where you invest, where you don't, where you're making enough, are you not making enough, are you spending too much, are you spending too little, you know, all of that there with the second house. And also being valued in where you are, you know, what you do, being valued at home as well, with the, you know, Venus ruling your IC. But also from those questions, at some point, depending where the cusp, you know, of the second house is there for you, and what degree is your ascendant as well, Venus will move back to your first house. And when Venus moves back to your first house, we'll go back from the second to the first. So from finances, how I spend money, how do I invest, am I being valued, etc., to how I express myself. First house. Am I embracing Venus as part of my identity? Am I expressing these feminine qualities, or this, what Venus represents astrologically? Am I actually expressing that enough? Am I being the one that values myself first? Am I dressing accordingly? Am I dressing to the part? That's the Venus in the first, and one might be influencing the other. All right, so the second house might be influencing the first day when you have this movement from one house to the other. So for the late Cancer, excuse me, for the late Cancer, we're gonna have Venus in the first house, so 28 29 degrees Cancer rising. Venus will be going retrograde only in the first house, and also for the early degrees Leo as well. Venus will be retrograde only in the first house. And again, it will be all about how you see yourself, how you express yourself. Do you find yourself beautiful? Do you beautify yourself enough? Do you spend time grooming yourself? Are you not doing enough? Are you doing too much of that? And that's sort of bringing, are you being lazy? That's another shadow of Venus there. When we have that, it's basically all the ways that you express Venus as part of your identity. And you have, this will be an invitation for you to embrace Venus a little bit more, to make that Venus part of your identity somehow. This is all there for you with that Venus transiting your first house. Now for the mid Leo, there is a transition between 1st and 12, and Venus will be crossing over your ascendant. So the closest your ascendant in Leo is to the 12th degree, the closest Venus will get to your ascendant, and is stationed on your ascendant. So here we have the mid degrees, and you see Venus getting closer and closer to the ascendant, at the point of retrogradation. So it will cross over your ascendant, and these questions about how you come out into the world, how you show yourself, how you express yourself, will be very, very under the spotlight here, crossing over your ascendant. And how much time do you spend beautifying yourself? How much time do you spend expressing your values through how you look, through who you are, through how you show yourself into the world as well? And it might bring the communication as well. How do you verbalize the sense of who you are? And also career, if you're midheaven in Taurus there as well. So Venus rules at midheaven. So how are you aligning your communication, your career to your identity, through that Venus and the Venus retrograde? And, are you valuing yourself enough? Issues of self-worth will be very under the spotlight, and you can really accomplish a lot during this retrogradation in terms of beautifying yourself and putting the effort and working on self-worth and observing where that's not, in your favor. Now, this mid degrees Leo will have Venus going back to the 12, including the late degrees of Leo, which will have Venus transiting Venus only in the 12th house. Now, from the 1st to the 12th, we'll have this shift of, all the things that we can see that's about me, that's part of my identity or not, how I'm dressing, how I'm showing myself out to the world. With the 12th house is everything that's hidden, everything that's behind the scenes. So all the Venusian issues that you might have, that might be there in your unconscious, and you're going to be invited to work with it, to bring that a little bit more to consciousness, to become a little bit more aware of these issues. How is Venus in your family line? I like to think about the 12 houses are family lines as well, and things that, the family myth that's been there, hidden, and we're sort of working on it slowly, but with the transits in the 12, we get that opportunity to sort of look into that a little bit more, to have a little bit more of awareness. So how easy is for you to value yourself, or to put yourself in the limelight, to value your uniqueness? That's Venus in Leo. to have fun as well. Is something that you consider frivolous and you don't do it? What is that? And I think especially for the early degrees of Virgo, so from 0 to 12, from 0 to 12 Virgo, we have this Venus going only in the 12th house. And with the Virgo ascendant, is all about coming out into the world and working hard and, doing the work, cleaning the mess, organizing everything, controlling the environment potentially, so this Venus in the 12 will be there for you to reclaim, the Venusian aspect that might be in your unconscious. Again, really important to find where is Venus in your natal chart, because that will be giving further clues about what your relationship to Venus and the Venusian principle is. And this video is just a little, I'm just giving you a little bit of inspiration here for you to know where it is, to do your own detective work, to find what else can you do with this Venus retrograde. But in the 12 is everything that's hidden, everything that's under the surface. It could be your relationship to the spiritual world as well, to the unconscious. What is your unconscious relationship with the feminine, or, to beauty, being beautiful? Are you comfortable with that? Are you uncomfortable with that? This is all the 12th house. And this will be there as well for the mid Virgo, which will have Venus transiting the 12th house, but moving on to the 11th. So again, the sense of a threshold, going from the 12, going from something that's very unconscious to the 11th, which is an air house, is a little bit more conscious, a bit more rational. It's about the group, it's about friends, it's about who you are in a group situation as well, and your group of friends, or your beliefs and hopes for the future. That's 11th house as well. So for, once Venus moves into that house, then things might become a little bit more obvious in that area there, might bleed into the 11th house. And with the 11th, here we have with the 11th house, for the late, especially the late degrees of Virgo as well, and the early Libra, Venus will be only in the 11th house. So Venus going retrograde in the 11th in Leo there. I mean, how much time do you allocate for meeting your friends? That's one of the basic ones. Are you seeing friends? Are you spending time with friends? Do you have friends? What is the situation there? What is the, again, with the Libra rising especially, Venus is your chart ruler. So it has a lot to do with your sense of identity as well. And, do you share values with your friends? Excuse me. Do you share values with your friends? Do you have things in common? Do you have fun with your friends? Or, what is the situation in the group? And if there was any disturbance and disharmony, maybe with Venus retrograde there, you're going to be able to reclaim those relationships and make peace with it again. But it's like seeing yourself as part of a group and bringing all the Venusian issues, the Venusian themes into that house. For you, late Virgo, early Libra, and the mid Libra as well. For a while that Venus will be in the 11th house until it moves back into the 10th. So really about these sort of, the beliefs that you have as well, and how do you mix that with your sense of worth, your sense of who you are there as well, with Venus ruling your ascendant. So those will be the topics really of the 11th house. And then for the mid Libra, having the Venus popping back to the 10th, also the late Libra with Venus only in the 10th, and the early Scorpio, there you go, which will be Venus only in the 10th house as well. Venus retrograde in the 10th will be all about your social role. Who are you in the world? Are you doing something that you enjoy, that you really value? With Venus questions, or not? Are you having fun at work as well? Are you doing something that makes you stand out? What is your personal brand? What is your personal mark? Venus in Leo. You know, it's a time to rethink all of that, to reassess all of that. And especially for the Scorpio rising, and particularly from 12 degrees Scorpio rising onwards, we're going to have potentially Venus crossing over the midheaven as well. And when Venus retrogrades over your midheaven, that becomes even more like obvious for you. Potentially it might be also women giving you chances, opportunities coming our way through women. You know, that's one of the classic ways of reading that Venus crossing over the midheaven. You know, something that might come over to you that might be there for you, you know, in terms of work and career, because we know 10th house is work, career, and your social role, who you are in society, what you play, your public persona. So you might have a chance to become more public as well with that Venus retrograde over your midheaven in special. But we're going to be re-asking these questions, you know, what is it? If you have business partnerships that are not really you know, fulfilling, or that does not speak to you, to your values, do you share values with these partner? And again, I think the question of values, so if you go back to my part number 1 of Venus, make sure you watch, and I don't want to tell you what to do because I'm very Uranian and I hate when people tell me what to do, but like, make sure you watch the values bit, because I think if you don't have time to watch, values are going to be very important with Venus retrograde. And I think we take for granted on how important having a connection with our values is, and how important Venus, you know, this role that Venus play is. So values in relation to work, in relation to career, in relation to your social role, etc., this is all there for you. Obviously the mid degrees of Scorpio in particular will have Venus moving to the 9th, and that will be worldview. So you're questioning your career, your social role, what are you doing, etc., and then boom, it goes back to your 9th house. And in particular, the late degrees of Scorpio will have only in the 9th, and the early degrees of Sagittarius will have Venus in the 9th as well, retrograde. So with the 9th house, it will be all about worldview. And, you know, does your worldview is inclusive of your sense of self-worth, or is it not? Do you feel guilty? You know, if we think about religions in relation to the 9th house as well, and the sense of guilt because you've done something that doesn't align with the moral code of a, you know, of a belief system that you're part of, and you're struggling with that, well, that it will be there for you to review, to rethink, to reintegrate. You know, I think these Venus retrograding Leo at best will be reclaiming your sense of self-worth, reclaiming the sense of self-worth for who we are. That's Leo. We don't need to be anyone else. We don't need to do anything else. We're fine the way we are. But with the 9, will be also potentially about traveling, potentially meeting a lover that is from far away, you know. Venus in the 9th house. It's something about that, you know, it could relate, you know, be connected with the partner coming back to you as well, the partner from far away. See, there's so many ways that we can see this, because the 9th house is also foreign lands, but it could be you reassessing who you are in foreign lands. And if we move on to the early Sag, like I said, you know, we have Venus in the 9 there, and again, it could be your travels, your sense of belonging, 11th house, your sense of belonging to a place or not belonging to that place anymore. You know, is that affecting your health? That's the ruler of the 6th house as well. So Venus in the 9th house there will be bringing questions about your belief system. What do you believe in? What do you believe about the feminine, about who you are as well, about how you embrace yourself, about how you beautify yourself? Is that included in your beliefs or not? It could be your values in relation to your higher education as well. Like, are you studying something that you actually value? Are you not? Are you reviewing? What are you doing? Reviewing research? Could be that too. But it will be in the 9th house there for you. All right. Now, from the mid from the mid Sagittarius to mid Sagittarius, we're gonna have Venus in the 9 popping back to the 8th. So it will be that threshold again, like between the 9 and the 8th. So going from the big questions and what your moral codes are, what your belief systems are, etc., to the 8th house and finding out about, you know, the deeper issues, going down into the den, you know, and like asking questions, you know, with your Sag rising, but that would be of deeper, darker qualities when Venus pop into your 8th house. For the late degrees of Sagittarius, it will be in the 8th house anyways, and it will be transiting only the 8th house, as well as for the early degrees of Capricorn. And Venus going retrograde in the 8th, there's a lot about all of the things that are hidden as well, that are taboo, that we're going to be reviewing and revisiting. All the taboos that might be on the way of us reclaiming our self-worth, reclaiming a sense of valuing ourselves, you know, potentially having fun, potentially career as well. How can you embrace the deeper questions for the Capricorn rising, especially that has Libra on the midheaven? How can you reclaim the depth of the 8th house, you know, psychology, obsessions, but also other people's money, you know, and your relationship to other people's monies as well? And how can you reclaim these questions and integrate that possibly into your career as well? But the psychology side of things with the 8th house is going to be part of this Venus retrograde for you, on how you value that, how you express that, how do you embrace that, you know, with the Venus in the 8th house. And the early Capricorn. Now, for the mid Capricorn, again, we have that case of a threshold. So Venus will be in the 8th house, but will pop back to the 7th. And I feel that because we have this threshold, yes, we can think about how to embrace the 8th house more in your career, and, you know, all of these questions, maybe bring some more mystical elements into your career. I don't know if that could be one, or into your art, if you're an artist with a Capricorn rising. But that will bleed into partnerships as well, because that at some point it will move into your 7th house, which will be happening for the late degrees of Capricorn anyway. So late degrees of Capricorn will have Venus only in the 7th, and the early degrees Aquarius as well will be in the 7th. And once Venus pops, you know, retrograde in the 7, we'll be rethinking, reassessing, revaluing, relooking, etc. Everything to do with partnerships, how we're doing partnerships, how we're not doing partnerships, what's important in partnerships to us, what are we looking for if we are looking for something, how we're relating if we are in a relationship already, what's going on in our partnerships, how healthy our partnerships are we moving in together, are we leaving together? Because especially for the Aquarius, Taurus is in the IC. So, you know, what is your relationship there in terms of the domestic life together, the life that you share together, you know? But anything to do with self-worth, with making peace, with, you know, maybe you're not being direct enough in your partnerships. I don't know. You're expressing the shadow of Venus, which is getting things in a very indirect way. Again, I would really recommend that you look into part 1 and you at least go through the timestamps and find some of the topics that, you know, I was sharing about the potentials for Venus, and see what makes sense to you. So you watch those couple of minutes there about, you know, Venus, and then you know that this is going to be in your 7th house for you. So all about partnerships, being creative in partnerships, being unique in your partnerships. And especially for the mid Aquarius, you know, we're gonna have Venus crossing the descendant, and that's gonna be, it could be someone coming back to you, it could be someone texting you again, someone getting in touch with you again, or something from the past returning to you, you know, in terms of love relationships or potential work partnerships as well. But for the mid Aquarius, the late Aquarius, and the early Pisces, Venus will be in the 6th house as well. So when it shifts into the 6th house, it's like elements of the 7th bleeding into the 6th, you know. And the 6th house is all about service, right? All about service. How do we serve? How do we how can we be useful as well? But our daily job, our daily work, it could be co-workers, it could be a situation with a co-worker, or something with a female co-worker as well, you know, as Venus traditionally represents females. So something there. But it could also be your relationship to your body on a daily, you know, on a daily routine, how you're treating your body. Are you having beauty routines, your beauty sleep, you know, looking after your hair, looking after some of these things could be really embraced there for you, you know, having Venus in the 6th house. Embrace Venus on your daily routines. And, you know, for the Pisces rising there, like really bringing that Venus in your daily life. As well, somehow, you know, that could be one. Is also the house of pets, and it could be something about a pet as well that, you know, you love very much, Venus, your cat, Venus and Leo, I don't know. But definitely there is this sense, you know, of embracing Venus on a daily life. So again, I haven't explored Venus with a lot of depth because the purpose of this video was to find it in the houses. But part 1 is all about Venus. There's so much in there that you can mine it, you know, that you can be like, aha, this is something that's being really relevant to me. So I'll definitely watch these couple of minutes. And I take so much time on my timestamps to make sure that's so detailed that, you know, I'd really recommend you go have a look if you don't have enough time to watch the whole video, and find the things that make sense to you. But Venus in the 6th could be opportunities at work, could be something happening at work, revisiting, reviewing at work, and eventually, you know, could trine your midheaven, Pisces rising, and it could be something, you know, an opportunity, something something nice, you know, enjoying creativity, embracing creativity. From the mid Pisces, that will be even more relevant because Venus will pop back to the 5th house. And it, you know, once it pops back to the 5th, it will be all the things related that I talked about it with the Aries rising already. So it will be late Pisces. Oh, I'm moving to the wrong side. So late Pisces, so 28, 29 Pisces will have Venus in the 5th only. And the mid Pisces will have Venus popping into the 5th house. And so again, if you have the Venus popping from the 6th to the 5th, it could be the storytelling of work, daily work, and opportunity to embrace more creativity, to embrace a hobby, make a hobby more profitable somehow. You know, I don't know. But with Venus only in the 5th for the late Pisces, I already talked about that with the early Aries, and it would be all about hobbies, creativity, fun, romance, love affair, you know, all of that. How do you leave that? How do you embrace that in your life? Are there any issues about that, you know? Is any hobbies that you can make it profitable? With Venus naturally ruling your 2nd house, you know, those are some of the questions. Again, I'd really recommend have a look at that video, find the topics and the themes that really speak to you, and you can bring that, you know, look into that video part 1, say, right, okay, I'm having issues with self-worth, or I'm having issues with money. How can I bring that into the house that Venus will be retrograding there? So all of these videos is about empowering you, is about sharing this knowledge, because I have the passion and I love it, but it's also empowering you. You're important, you matter, and the life that you want to create really matters. So this is the goal. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. Write in the comments where Venus will be retrograding, what have you found out if you watch the other video as well. And you know, ask questions. I love answering questions. And I wish you all an amazing Venus retrograde. I hope you can make the most, you can embrace that in the best way possible. And I'll be seeing you all soon. Bye bye now.